Hey, and welcome to the Leadership Loading Podcast. My name is Jason McClaren.
And I'm Ashley Couto.
Thank you for coming on the show today. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what we're going to talk about today?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. So, I am a journalist and a fractional CMO. I've worked in marketing for 20 years now, and most of my job has been helping people create and leverage their personal brands and grow their businesses online. And I started using about a decade ago publications to grow my own business. Now I help clients and the startups that I consult on to grow their businesses using the same method.
Definitely, I think as leaders or future leaders, almost everyone has a book now, right? You talk to somebody that's a leader, and they're like, "Oh, I'm the COO or whatever," and here's my book, blah blah blah. And so, I think this is very relevant, especially in these times. A lot more people are reading now post COVID, and I think this is very useful for those looking to establish their brand and move forward. So can you tell me, like, what's the first step? Somebody that's wanting to get into it and move forward and start their marketing through publications.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is to have a really solid focus of what's going to move your business forward and understanding the style of publication that's going to work best based on your niche. So, for example, if you're speaking to startup founders, Inc. is a really good option for you because that's really their brand is startups, founders, that's their primary audience of who reads. If you have more of, let's say, like a wellness brand, then a publication like Well and Good, Mind, Body, Green, things that focus on wellness is really going to be your best path forward. So that's really step number one is identifying which ones are really going to be the best ones for your business. And then taking a really deep dive and actually reading what it is that these publications are producing. So, for example, I write a lot for Business Insider. They produce almost exclusively like first person stories and first person content. And they're a very storytelling forward brand. So, knowing exactly the types of stories they're looking for can help whether you're going to be writing and contributing yourself or trying to get a journalist, someone like me to pick up your story and run it. Trying to find some angles and find some ways in that are, going to be natural for the publication and are going to seem like a really solid fit are going to be, the best ways of getting in and the best chances of getting in.
Yeah, definitely. You don't want to be starting a podcast or a newsletter if it's not part of your brand, right? And so I think
Mhm.
that's important to know what you're going to be doing and making sure that your ideal customer avatar or whoever you're working with is going to be actually reading it or looking at it. That's good to know.
Yeah, exactly. Because you don't want to be collecting logos for the sake of collecting logos. And I mean, there's a lot of really like scammy PR services online that say that they're going to get you onto like Fox, ABC, CNN, things like that. All they're doing is just pushing a press release that nobody's ever going to read onto these sites and that get indexed like very quickly. I think it's usually within a year or less. And that's very different than being featured or writing for the publication because they don't get any traction. No one sees. If someone goes to look after about a year, your stuff is not even there. And so these are, weird ways to game the system. But if you're going to do it and you're going to build your business, you want to do it correctly and you want to do it in a way that is really built off of integrity because every time you take a scammy move in your business, it doesn't matter if it's PR or paying for something else, that gets associated with your brand forever. And that is really a customer's, or client's first impression of your business. So I think if you're going to do publications, especially, you want to do it and you want to do it right and in a way that is really authentic and in integrity and doesn't try and like skirt the system with any of these weird side channels that don't actually work.
Yeah, I've seen that before, and we can talk about that in a second, like how to identify the scammy people. But yeah, I've seen, you'll look at somebody's website, it's like featured on Fox, and then like the sub bullet on the logo is like Fox, Yahoo.org, .net. It's like a sub channel. So how
Yeah.
do you identify, if marketing, say, I'm starting my company and I'm, starting a roofing company and want to get my name out there, and I get a person saying, "Oh, I can get you on all these news channels and we can talk about roofing." how to identify the scams versus the real
Yeah,
opportunity.
so you can ask them for examples of people that they've done this for before. And if you look at it, it will look very much like a press release. So the two things that you can use to identify, oh, they're just publishing a press release is really two things. One, it's going to lead with the date and the location. Those are two things that are really normal for pretty much any press release. It's going to start with date, location, because people need to know when this information is coming out and where the origin source is of the information. And it's going to read like an advertisement. It's not going to read like an article. So typically when you read a news article, the news article will sort of give you the summary of what the article is about in a sentence so that you can make a reasonable assumption of whether this is something you want to read and spend your time on or not, because publications know that people are very busy and they want to lead with all the information up front. A press release typically is going to start with talking about like the company or the person more in general, and they just have a different field. You can usually see too, because it's going to be some kind of like weird subdomain part of the site, like you were mentioning, rather than the website proper, because no publication on earth is just pushing a press release to their main domain. That just doesn't happen. You can look at literally any publication on earth. Their front page stories are not press releases. There is like a journalist who is byline that has actually written it. It has usually gone through at least one, most of the time, two, three different levels of vetting before it goes live. And the other red flag is if you're only talking with someone from the company and you're not being interviewed by an actual journalist that identifies themselves as being a journalist, that tells you, hey, I'm going to be recording this. Do I have your consent to record? Those are all red flags that this is a scam service, because in order for you to actually have an article in a publication, a journalist has to interview you. That is the number one criteria. Someone actually has to interview you that is not a part of the PR company, but is actually someone that works for that publication.
Definitely, and that's all good stuff. So that sounds like, maybe that'd be something a new business owner is trying to do maybe themselves. And obviously you can't just I'm sure you can go get a press release template online and blast it out, but I don't think journalists really like that. But
No, no, we get pitched so much with just different press releases all day, and we literally just delete them 99% of the time, unless it's like an Apple and Amazon. Because at the end of the day, we really don't care about what news you want to promote. We care about what it is that people are actually going to read. And I would say that's the biggest tip that I could give someone if they were, thinking about pitching a journalist or pitching an editor, if they want to contribute themselves, is you have to make it very clear why it is that someone should care about this story. We're so inundated by news and people trying to grab our attention all the time that there has to actually be something that is newsworthy. This comes into my inbox all the time, like, oh, we raised $10,000 for charity. And it's like, that's great, but maybe don't pitch me, who writes for like national and international publications. Like, pitch your local news. They're the ones that are going to be interested in that community story, but it's not going to be interesting or relevant to me. So knowing as well and thinking about, who does this make the most sense to? Does this make the most sense to my local community? Is this like international news? And what about this is actually interested for like Brittany, that's a mom with two kids in Arkansas? Why is she going to want to read this story?
how do business leaders or business owners or coaches start building that relationship early on? Because I know like national news or even the mainstream, sometimes it's breaking news and they're like, I need an expert right now to come on and talk about this. How do we get in their Rolodex so that they know who to call when it
Yes.
happens?
Yes, there's a couple of different ways. So the first one is you can go on X, formerly Twitter, and look at the hashtag journo request. If you are like brand spanking new to media, you don't have any features, any mentions, nothing like that. That's a great spot, because journalists are literally asking for people all day, every day. Hey, I need a source that can speak to this. Hey, I need a source that can speak about that. The other place that you can go to is called Connectively. It is the largest bank of journalists that want sources for stories. So you can submit your name and your info. It's totally free, and you will get an email of journalists looking every day for sources for stories. And this ranges from everything from, I'm looking for an insurance inspector, I'm looking for former veterans, I'm looking for veterans, former active service members. I'm looking for people that are executives in companies. I'm looking for, moms that have pulled their kids out of school to homeschool. The field of what journalists are looking for is just so vast. And so this is a really great way of aggregating and starting to build those relationships by contributing in a meaningful way and giving, great quotes to journalists that hopefully they, will include in their articles.
Yeah, definitely. And I believe you and I connected through a similar source. I don't want to give up my golden goose, but um, Peter Shankman, is that right? Is it Peter?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Peter Shankman. I
Mm.
think it's Help Every Reporter Out is the name of it. Yeah, he used to work for Connectively, and then he sold his company to them, and so he started up a new one. And very similar, it aggregates requests of journalists, podcasters, people that are looking to have people come on. And yeah, that's how we connected. So this should be proof that it works.
Yeah, it was HARO, and then he went to HERO, and now it's SOS, sources of sources. But yeah, it's helped our podcast out a lot. Just as our biggest hurt on our podcast is getting guests on, and like you said, it's helped out a lot, filling those source needs, or like you said, getting people on the show. So, do you bring in clients? Do you help people get their stuff out there?
So, as a journalist, I'm not allowed to interview my own clients. So, if someone becomes a client of mine, I can help them to create pitch ideas. I can help review their pitches for them. I can send pitches on their behalf to other journalists and people that I know and work with because journalism is a very small field. So, I can do that, no problem. But I can't actually write about them. So, this is another, we were talking about red flags. Another big red flag is any time that there is an exchange of payment to be featured in a certain place. So someone is saying like, oh, I'll charge you $1,000 and you'll end up with an article in Entrepreneur. That should be a red flag for you because it's actually unethical for journalists to do that. And editors do find out. And the problem is that the second that an editor finds out, you're basically blacklisted from the entire industry because the editor will definitely put you on blast, if not formally to the rest of the world, to the journalism community. And I mean, it's even happened to me before. I'm doing due diligence on an article and I look and see that a source gave completely contradicting information. What happens is not only does that story get canceled at the publication that I'm writing for, but then I'm emailing the journalist and other editors at that publication saying, hey, I just want to let you know that this person's facts are not credible and reliable. Like, here's what's happened with me. So all of your previous press can get taken down too. And the journalism is an industry that moves. People are constantly moving. They write for multiple publications. So if are someone that is blacklisted in one place, it circulates very, very quickly because the people that write in a particular vertical, there's a small handful of us only, and we all know each other. So word travels fast and you will be blacklisted. And the number one thing you can do to get blacklisted is pay to be featured in a specific publication. It will ruin that journalist or that contributor's career at that publication immediately, and it will pretty much blacklist you right away.
Yeah, I've heard about those also. Paying to play to get on the different things, and usually that's those subdomains you see that you're not really even getting in the high ticket coverage. So, right. So, what would be your one tip to leaders? Wanting to leverage their publications on their topic.
It all comes down to the pitch idea. So, your pitch idea is the most important thing, whether you're going to reach out to an editor or you're going to reach out to a journalist. Have an interesting angle that looks like something the publication could already cover. And if you're going to be pitching a journalist, be very clear about why you're pitching this specific journalist in your pitch. Because it's basically our job as journalists to go and fight for you and to fight for this story to get it included, especially if you're reaching out to a freelance journalist who writes for a bunch of places. We need to be able to feel connected to the story, and we need to feel like this story is worth fighting for and trying to place in different, places. So yeah, definitely make sure that it feels like a story that could be at the publication. And if you're pitching a journalist, make sure that that journalist knows exactly why you're thinking of them. Maybe it's because they're a former service member as well. Maybe it's because you guys have been through very similar things and they've had articles where they've talked about that. Really make it clear what it is that the connection is and why you're pitching this person specifically so that they feel compelled to A, pick up this story, but also B, go to bat for it because it can be a long process trying to get something placed. And the more passionate that we are about a story and the more that we believe in it, the better it is going to be for you.
Definitely. And Ashley, how can people get a hold of you if they wanted to reach out?
Yeah, so the best place is on LinkedIn. You can just look up my profile. It's just Ashley Couto. And you can just let me know that you're connecting from the Go Heroes podcast when you send me a connection request. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have to, help you figure out which publications might be some of the best ones for you. And yeah, if you want to work together, happy to have that conversation as well.
Awesome. We'll put all the links that we discussed to all the things in the show notes below, and then we'll go from there. Well, Ashley, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me.
There are thousands of leadership and management podcasts to choose from. We're glad you chose the Leadership Loading Podcast, a Go Heroes production. If you'd like to support Go Heroes Inc., visit www.goheroes.org. And with that, it's time to wrap up today's show. Thank you so much for listening. We sincerely hope you liked it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with your family and friends. Let's all grow together. Thanks for listening to the Leadership Loading Podcast. Leadership Inspired.